on this screen I've shared, I have just a word wrap on what the humanitarian sector does in general. And you can see we have a livelihood support there, we have a provision of clean water, we have agricultural crisis, refugee care. So this list is endless. And maybe the question that we need to ask ourselves, how is the approach in doing these tasks here? Which tools are we using in making sure that we have a good decision making based on what we are doing, be it education initiatives, maybe you're somewhere in a village and you want to see how your education initiatives are going on. How can you evaluate? How can you monitor progress? How can you report? So when we talk about GIS here, I want just to mention that GIS can really help in doing all these word wrappings on the screen here, okay? And it is a tool which is really powerful, and you can really leverage on this tool called GIS, so Geospatial Information Systems. So how I'm going to approach this is we're going to just have a discussion on data sourcing and data collection. Remember, before you use this system here, you need the data. And I know even if you're doing the traditional methods, of course, you have to go to the field or you're sourcing the data from somewhere else. Okay, so how do you source this data? How do you collect? Where are the sources? Where do we get this the data for us? And then we are going to check on data processing. How am I going now to make my data into meaningful information? How am I going to collect them together somewhere? Okay, we are going to see a discussion on data management, data analysis, how can you do overlays, what can you include in your data you have collected from the field, how can you migrate from the traditional method of data collection now to this GIS here. How will you present your data? So maybe for a start, I'll just introduce the tools, or I'll call them the software, which we use in GIS. So as I've said, GIS is Geospatial Information Systems. So what this system is doing is you want to have this locational based aspect in the data you're collecting. But now what you're doing is you want to see them on your screen. You want to make decisions faster. You want to see that, okay, this place I'm having maybe a hospital, or maybe I'm having a refugee camp. What is the situation at this point? What needs to be done? Okay, so I took maybe some aid to some refugee camps. Can I see them at a glance on a map? How are they faring on? How many people are there? Okay, so we have several software we can use. So from this screen here, you can see the first one is what I'm calling QGIS. Quantum GIS is one of the software we can use. You're having what you're calling ArcGIS here. You're having Saga GIS. So the list is endless. There are several, but now the choice depends on what you're doing. The choice depends on the costings you want to put into this software here. The efficiency you want to get. So maybe on this screen, what I'll discuss is what we're calling the open source software and the commercial software. Okay, so open source is readily available for everyone to use. Okay, so that means there are no license subscriptions, no pay. That's in layman. Okay, so talking about that, we have this software called QGIS, which is really strong. Some of you have heard about that. And it's open source. You can use it at any time. You can download it freely from the web, and you can now use it in getting to whatever you're responding to. Okay, so an example of a commercial source software is what you're calling ArcGIS. Okay, anyway, let's jump data collection and data sourcing. What is there now that we know that we're having some tools? We we can use in processing and analyzing our data. So where do we get our data? And I know maybe for most of you who are practicing. So Steve, please keep checking the chat for me so that I can be on the know. Someone is asking if you could send us the link for each software. Yes, I'll do that just in a moment. So where is my data now that I'm having the platform I can use in doing my processing? Okay, so you can get data from several sources. Of course, we are having existing data. So there are data which people have already collected. And this is good because if your field of study or your area of interest already has data, for example, maybe you're doing something on hospitals, okay, or schools, and you realize there are so many data sets of schools, their documentation online. Example, use the link which I've just put in brackets there, the humanitarian data exchange. It's a good platform for sourcing data. So if you're having data which exists, so there's no need of you to go down to the field now to collect your data. So there are several sources you can get your data, but the question you should ask yourself is this data credible? Is the data maybe up to date? Does the data meet the requirements you need? Because when you're sourcing data, you realize there are fields which you need for you to proceed with your data analysis, okay? Does this data contain all this information that you need now before you make this decision of going to the field? We have a remote sensing data. That one we're talking about satellite imagery. So there are several sources, including the Landsat. It's freely available. Sentinel data, that one is freely available. I can share some links. Maybe someone can get to see what they offer. So for remote sensing data, this one mainly comes as imagery. So again, the software which we've talked about up there, they entail the capability of now processing these satellite imagery. Okay, what do I want to know? I want to know maybe land use, land cover. Okay, before I go to the field, I need to know, is this area forested? Is this area having even access? Are there roads in this area I'm going? So you can really leverage on remotely sensed data, which you can download them online. That's for free. So let's talk about now going to the field. Maybe you realize I've gone my data search. Fields which are missing. Maybe this data is not mentioning about the number of nurses in this hospital, or maybe the number of refugees in these camps. So what do I do? So I have the option of now going to the field, and that's why the third component here is what I'm calling mobile data collection. Okay, so for mobile data collection, what you'll need to know is how am I going to create my questionnaires. So that's why I'm having these questions here. I need to know how to develop my questionnaires. So these tools which have been mentioned here, including Kobo Toolbox, the Open Data Kit, that's ODK, ComCare, there are several. Someone can be trained on how to develop the questionnaires. Okay, so you're having your questions in paper, and that's why I was talking about migrating now from the traditional method of data collection now to this form here. Okay, I have my questionnaire. These are the questions I need to ask the field. That's before I send maybe my enumerators the field. So what happens in these tools here, the three of them, is you'll create your questionnaires from scratch. Okay, so you start by mentioning, what do I need? What do I need to analyze? Am I doing monitoring and evaluation? Am I going to use this data later on, or am I going to visit the field after I have collected my data now to go and monitor, is whatever we've been doing going on? Is there a problem in implementing what we've been doing? Okay, so this one, I know maybe Steve can support in that. E-enhancement has really done good in training people on mobile data collection, how you develop your questionnaires, how you make sure now you add the geolocation aspect, because here we are talking about GIS. We want to know where is it exactly on a map. Okay, so for this one here, the first thing you need to know is which tool am I going to use? It's good because they are open source and someone can develop these questionnaires from scratch. Okay, and then where is my questionnaire? Which questions do I want to go and collect data on in the field? And then now you start creating them step by step until you're having a complete form. Again, it can be shared by many users. That's when I'm talking about the enumerators. Several people can go to the field and they'll use the same questionnaire you have developed now in getting your data. And then you can store your data somewhere on a geodatabase. And then now you can bring in the GIS aspect, any software, maybe you're using QGIS. Now let me do my analysis. So it's a good tool, especially if you feel like you really need to go to the field. If the existing data and the remotely sensed data do not meet with your requirements. Okay, so to the next slide. So after you've collected your data, the next thing you need to do is to process your data. Okay, so the question that you are asking yourselves here is, where am I going to store my data? Okay, where am I going to process my data? Which platform am I going to use? Okay, so in this, it entails data editing and cleanup. You get maybe you are sourcing data from a source, maybe from the Humanitarian Data Exchange platform, and you realize maybe some of the data are missing some fields, which we're calling the null values. How are you going to now solve that? Are you going to do away with that field? Are you going to add another field? Cleanup again, you are checking on things like which data don't I need? Okay, that's now when you've done your sourcing. Okay, so it entails elimination of fields which you don't need in your data. For example, maybe you collect data on hospitals, and maybe one of the fields is talking about the size of the land where the hospital sits. Maybe you don't need that data, so you can easily do away with that before you proceed with your data analysis. Data integration. So for integration here, what you're talking about is, yes, I'm having my data, but what else can I add? Okay, can I add maybe data on roads? Maybe I want to check on accessibility of the areas where I'll be going to. Data conversion, when you source your data, they come in different formats. Okay, and maybe when someone does further training on GIS, you realize that the GIS systems, they can read data in what you're calling the vector format and the raster format, which I've just this image here. Okay, so it can read data in terms of points. Those are when we're talking about point values in the field. For example, things like schools, things like hospitals, things like towns, things like refugee camps. So those one will come as points in now your software. Okay, I know maybe at the before the end of this webinar, we are going to maybe have a short demo where that one will be much clearer. Okay, when you talk about things like roads or rivers, depending on what you're doing, the line features, those ones will come as lines. That one in your GIS software. when you're talking about maybe large areas, you want to know the extent where maybe a vulnerable group is living at, which radius or which area are they staying at. So there you're talking about polygons. Okay, that's when it comes now to the GIS software here. This other format which you're calling raster here for the imagery, the remotely sensed data. Remember, it's coming as an image. Okay, so how is it read now on this GIS software? It's read in form of pixels. So it's those pixels which you need to analyze. Talking about data storage and management here, where are you storing your data? If you're going to the field with the ODK or Kobo Toolbox, or that's mobile data collection, where are you going to store them? You have the option of storing them in Google servers. That's a Google Drive. You can choose to have a database where you are storing all your data from your enumerators in the field, so that now later on you can pull them down and do your analysis. Okay. We have a metadata creation. So what is metadata? When you're sourcing your data or even when you're collecting your data, you'll need to describe these data. Okay, so in short, I can just say metadata is data about data. So you're talking about when was this data collected, for what purpose was this data collected, who collected the data, maybe which agency, which organization. You're talking about the extent of the data. Okay, so metadata is good for you to have so that now when you're sharing your data, people will know more information about this data. And maybe something to mention is when you're sourcing your data from other sources, what you need to do is go and check on the metadata, that information. How is this data up to date? Does it fit my area of study? Which fields are contained in this data? So that's why we're talking about metadata creation. So you need to create these now for the purposes of sharing your data to other people so that they can be on the know what is this data you are sharing all about. Okay, moving to the next is now the data analysis. So you've done your processing there, you've made your conversions, you've made the formats to be uniform for you to read that in a GIS software. You've deliberated on where you're going to store your data, maybe choose a database. You've done your metadata creation. The next thing is your data analysis. Okay, so in GIS, there are several data analysis tools which you can use. And I've just mentioned a small list here. So there are several depending on what you're doing. Just a moment. Good. I hope you can still see my screen without my notes there. Okay, so when we talk about the data analysis, so the GIS software really helps in extraction of meaningful insights. You want to know the patterns in your data. Is there correlation? Maybe you want to know where these hospitals are, where are the roads you need maybe to do proximity analysis. So the GIS data which you collect or which you source enables you now to make informed decisions basing on the analysis which you do. So let's check on them just in a few minutes, one by one. And when we talk about the spatial queries, these are the first one here. So what are you doing here? So spatial queries involve the selection and retrieving geographic features basing on their relationship with other features. For example, maybe if you're doing, you want to know how many schools are within 2 kilometers radius from these particular households, because you want to know the efficiency of these schools. How many people does this school serve? Is it good? Is it efficient? And so on. When you're talking about geoprocessing, you can see in brackets talking about buffering, clipping, merging. So these are options which are available in the GIS software, which maybe further training can really help in understanding. So just processing tries to create new information. Okay, you want to see which hospitals are within a radius of 1 kilometer from the road, which hospitals are accessible, which areas will I be having challenges in accessing a refugee camp. Okay, where is this refugee camp located? Is there hospitals within? Are there schools within? Do I need now to bring schools inside there? Do I need to start educational programs in this refugee camp, or are there schools within? Are there water sources? Where can we get water? These camps here. Okay, so that means you are combining several data sets. You are combining rivers, maybe water points, and your specific data, which is an example I just gave of the refugee camps. Okay. When we talk about spatial analysis, so spatial analysis, what you are doing is you just want to study the spatial patterns and relationships of the data you're having. Okay, so maybe you want to maybe predict what happens if a school is set up at a certain point. Remember, from the data which you are having, from what you have collected from, or from what you've sourced, you can now do things like suitability analysis. So I'm having a school here at this point A. I'm having another school at point B and C. Where can I possibly add another school somewhere there? Okay, so that means before you do your analysis, again, this step of data integration is really important. You need to know which data am I going to add on my existing data here. Okay. When we talk about density analysis, a good example can be made from this picture here. Okay, maybe you're mapping something like disease spread in a region, and maybe you went to the ground, and what you have done is you've collected data on the cases of these a disease. So you want to know which areas have been affected the most. For example, now in this image here, I'm not sure if it's really visible for people. You realize that this, where there is a red color here, it means that's the area where this particular aspect has affected that region so much. Okay, so doing something like density analysis, that means that now you can have informed decisions. Okay, you can now maybe locate points which needs quick reactions there. Maybe you want to take medicine at that point, or you want to deploy nurses. So such analysis, density analysis, can really help in that. And remember, what you're doing is you are seeing it at a glance on a map. That's why you're talking about just geographic information system. So this term geographic here is what's taking the day here. You want to see that at a glance. Where is it? Okay. Talking about proximity analysis. So on this image here, which we are having here, I'm just having some data for roads, just pick that at random. So that means if you're having these roads on this map here, what can you do with that? What you can do is you can now overlay your refugee camps. You can overlay your hospitals, okay? Remember things like roads, these are existing. Okay, you're not going to say now I want to build a new road. They are existing, but what you want to do is you want to know where are these existing roads with respect to my data. Okay, if it's hospitals, maybe we're having a hospital here. How am I going to access this hospital yet there is no road? So that one now will help you in making your informed decisions. Okay, so proximity analysis is really important, and I know it's the most common one because you can do this analysis even before going to the field. You want to make the work of your enumerators easy. Okay, which routes are you going to pass through? Okay, what's the timeline that we need this data to be collected? Are you going to face challenges of accessibility? Yes or no? So that one will depend, and then now you'll have to make your informed decisions. Um, Talking about network analysis. So for network analysis, what you're doing there is you just want to know the proximity of your data or your whatever you're studying with what is existing there. Okay, if it's an emergency response, where can I get the personnel to respond maybe to a flooding? Let's say, for example, you have some data on flooding on a certain area. And on top of that, you are having data on the number of households which live in this area. So at a glance, you'll get to know how many people have been affected. Okay, how many people will not be affected by this flooding here? So when doing this network analysis, you'll get to know the surface area which you are going to tackle. Okay, am I going to start with this area? How many people am I going to evacuate from this area? Is it accessible? Will I need maybe things like helicopters for that case? Will I only need maybe vehicles, or will people just move by their own to some safer areas? So talking about data analysis, there are several, and someone doesn't have to really get to know deep about GIS or this software. Okay, if you just know the basics of this software and some basic analysis here, you're really good to go, and you're really good now to use that in making informed decisions. Okay, to my next slide. You've done your data analysis. You've collected your data. You've done data integration and so on. How am I going now to present this data? Remember, presentation now is the last stage. Okay, you need to take this to maybe a board meeting and maybe talk about something. Here is what we got from the field, and what do we need to do? This is the situation. Okay, so let me talk about data presentation in GIS. Um, in GIS, you can present your data in so many forms, and one of the most common one is by the use of maps. Okay, so the most common product while doing GIS is maps, and I know most of us have used maps, even the Google Maps. For example, you want to go somewhere, you just pin the location and then it will direct you there. So that's one example of a map. Okay. Um, as I was saying, maps is the most traditional way of representing the data in GIS. And what this one does is it can be in so many formats. You can have a map which has been printed out. So that's a print format where you're just going somewhere and then maybe placing it as a chart and maybe checking on now what you got from the field. You can have it in a digital format, just on computer or on mobile phone. you want to explain to your team, this and this is what happened. So GIS is powerful such that it has what you're calling interactive maps. So what you can do is you can filter whatever you want to see. Okay, this area which is flooding, where is it? You can filter and say how many people are there. You can filter and say which areas have not been affected by a disaster. Okay, so maps are powerful, and I'll repeat and say it's the most common method of presenting your data that's now from analysis. The second way which you can present your data in GIS is by the use of charts and graphs. So it's not really big, it's just the normal charts and graphs where you're talking about bar charts, you're talking about um, maybe pie charts, you're talking about histograms. And remember, for charts, what you're doing is you are comparing some aspects which you're studying. Okay, so they represent statistical and quantitative data, which now you've done from your analysis. I can take an example of the hospitals again. So you went there, you used your Kobo toolbox or you used your ODK, and what you needed your enumerators to give you back is maybe data on the number of patients in a day with the number of staff or the doctors and nurses within that hospital. So you can use graphs now in doing that analysis. Okay, so maybe you'd be having a factor and saying maybe 50 patients need to be maybe taken care of by maybe 5 doctors. So from the graphs now, you can make a decision and say, oh, there is a shortage of doctors in this particular hospital here. Okay, you can use pie charts in that case. Maybe you're doing a refugee camp. You're saying I'm having this number of refugees in location A. I'm having maybe education trainers, this number, maybe 2 of them or 5 of them. Are they sufficient to handle this number of people? No. So what do? You make an informed decision. Maybe you add other people to that camp there. So charts and graphs really help in seeing at a glance a situation which is on the ground. It gives best decisions basing on the numbers which you're doing. I'm taking maybe some relief food somewhere in a certain region. I'm having this number of households. These households have a minimum of 5 people. So how many bags am I going to take there? So graphs would really help in that. So the other data presentation format which you can have are the tables. Okay, these are just tabular data presented. That's in rows and columns. So while having a table, it means you can easily compare values. Okay, and remember here we are talking about spatial spatial data. We are talking about GIS. So this locational factor is really important. But now, apart from this locational factor here, you are having this other information inside your data. Okay, so that means you can come up with tables now for you to make your informed decisions. You're talking about the number of people, maybe with the number of schools somewhere. So these figures which are represented on your table can really help you to visualize at a glance which decisions we are going to make there. The other format of data presentation is what you're calling dashboards. Okay, so dashboard, what it does in GIS is it consolidates all your data sources and then gives you one visualization on a single screen. An example is one from COVID-19 cases, which I just placed here. And you can see it's dynamic, okay? So this is an example of a dashboard here. So you can be having so many data sets or the data which you have collected, you have done your analysis, and then you now present using a dashboard. Okay, it's good because anytime you change data in your software, what it does is it updates at real time, so you can see what's the situation, what's happening. Maybe you are collecting data on daily basis. Maybe you're monitoring how you've been giving relief food, or you're monitoring the number of recoveries from a certain disease from a vaccine which you took to a certain area. So that one can really help the dashboard because you can see at a glance what's happening. And that one now will help you in making your decisions. It will help you in changing your strategies, which you've been using. Okay, so the next one is what you're calling story maps. So what are story maps? In most cases, people want to have narratives from the data which you collected from the field. Okay, and these narratives, people want them to be interactive as possible. You want to have pictures from the field. You want to tell someone this is the situation. They want to have some text explaining the situation which you've encountered. So story maps encompasses, or it takes into consideration your narratives, your images, your maps, which you've done after analysis, and even multimedia. You can have a video there. Okay, you want to show how a situation has been changing over time. Okay, so these story maps really help in creating stories now from your analysis. But now what you are adding is a text you want to explain to someone. This was the situation at this time. This is the situation at this time. At this time, this image can really give you a reflection of what the situation has been. Okay, so you can attach an image there. You can attach a video there of how that situation was. So story maps gives that capability of you now having to show people what's the situation on the ground, how has it been, how has the journey been. Lastly, we are having what we are calling heat maps, just from the name heat. And a good example of how you can understand this is from this image here, the one at the right top here. So heat maps, generally what it does is it visualizes concentration or distribution of data points on a map. And it uses color gradients. For example, I know if we see a red color somewhere, that means that's something which is really concentrated. For example, if you want maybe to show the spread of maybe a disease, so you can use a red color to show that this area has really been affected. Or even when you're doing something on hospitals, you want to show people how these hospitals have been distributed. You can use heat maps. So the more the heat, the more the hospitals are there. The less the heat, the less hospitals are there. So that means when you are presenting these data which you have analyzed now in form of heat maps, you can be in a position to make informed decisions. You can maybe say, please add hospitals here. Why? Because there is a large population of people. Remember again, you can use these heat maps in showing households, the number of people in an area. Okay, so as I've said here, you are going to use color gradients. Okay, so that marks my short presentation on GIS in humanitarian response, how you can use GIS. I've just touched on how you can collect your data, how you can manage your data, how you can do analysis, and then how you can present your data. So, I would want to show a short demo, um, a demo on a successful use of GIS. But this one, it was just a short, it was a short project for a very small area. And what this area, it was somewhere in Liberia. Let me see if I can have this slide. Okay, so the problem which this team was having was garbage collection. So in a certain region in Liberia called the Greater Monrovia district, I don't know if someone comes from there. So they wanted to know the efficiency of garbage collection and how they would make the district cleaner. Okay, so what was done is mapping all the available garbage location activities, and how it was used is they used the ODK. So two people went to the field and then they were just moving around and they were checking the condition of is there a garbage collection point. So if it was there, they could just key in some information. um, so the information included who manages the garbage collection point. Is it the community? Is it private? Is it public? Again, they were mapping the situation of that garbage collection point. Is it an open pit? Is it a garbage collection container? And then what they were doing next is they wanted to make a decision. Um, uh, is there need for additional garbage collection? They did integration with the road data. So for the roads, they were checking the accessibility. Can someone collect them now and dump them to the respective position or good place? Okay. And finally, what they came up with was just a simple map, which looked like this one here. Okay, so for my demo, what I wanted to show is how they went on with this. Which data did they use in doing that? Okay, so I'll stop my screen here and then I'll just open Quantum GIS, the one I had mentioned earlier on. Remember we talked about the several GIS software we can use, and this one is open source here. So let me end this screen sharing first. Then I share that. Okay, so just a moment. Where is it? Okay, so here we go. Okay, so this is the QGIS interface here. I know some people might be interested, so you might join maybe a short training. It doesn't take time. It's an easy tool to use. And what this, from what I just explained, is they wanted to know where these garbage collection points were. Okay. The first thing they did is they now inserted or loaded their data on this platform here. Okay, so this is where you view your data, and of course that's now after you've done your data collection, and then two, you've come and done what you're calling your data integration. So you need to add other data because for here they were having some roads, and maybe harmonization. You need to have them in certain formats. Remember we talked about the vector and the raster. Maybe I'll share this slide after this, and then we can check on that. So they add the collection points. So I'll just check on this. So if you check on this map now, so people went to the field and they collected this data here. So we were talking about data which comes in terms of points. That's hospitals, you're having things like schools, things like refugee camps, maybe households, maybe you're doing some nutrition, giving some nutrition initiatives. So those, the data which we'll collect now will come as points like the ones we are having here. So we had people who collected this data, and some people said from the data which we collected, there was no bucket there. So that means this dumping site was just on the ground. Okay, so you can see the number of dumping sites which had no buckets. Okay, so you can check that. So you can see we are having that. We are having around 12 of them here. Some enumerators went to the field and they said in that dumping site area, in that area there was a bucket. So a bucket is just where they put the garbage inside. Okay, so we can see here one bucket. So there are several which are one bucket. So where people place these garbage. Some guys said in the field they saw two buckets in dumping sites. So if I check on that, I can see there's around four of them. Okay. Someone said people were dumping in landfills. Okay, so one landfill here. So just somewhere dug and then people place trash there. Some people said they had a transfer station. So they just pile the garbage there and then a lorry comes and takes it away. So two of them. And then some people were not sure and they had one data which they were not sure which type it was. Okay, so this data here, it's not meaningful if it's just like this. So I want to imagine maybe these were your hospitals here, or maybe these were your refugee camps. So it's not really meaningful when you are having it like this one here. Okay, so that means you'll have to do some data integration. How about the roads? How accessible are these? So again, we sought some data for roads in Greater Monrovia. So we can check on the data there. So now you can see we are having some roads. And actually you can see most of them are closer to the road. Actually, some are just beside the road, like the way we are seeing here. Okay, all through. And again, some analysis here which was done was the proximity analysis, and of course, having these roads in terms of divisions. How is the road? Is it a good? Is it a primary road? Is it a secondary road? Is it a tertiary road? And so on. Okay. So again, this data in this format may be, for a layman, they might not really understand what it means. Okay, so that means, again, when you're doing your analysis in a GIS, what you can do is you can try and label some of your features, okay, in this road here. And labeling, maybe I can try and see, can I label these collection points? I want someone to see that this one is 1 bucket, this one is 2 bucket, maybe this one is landfill, and so on. So that's easy, I can do that. So I just want you to imagine you are working on your data somewhere, and you can do several things. So let me try just labeling this one here. So let me label the type there. And now you can see from my map, okay, so I want to label the type. Just a moment, so facility. So let me just leave that at the moment, like that. So this, as you're going along with doing your analysis, it means you're making your data more meaningful to someone, okay? And now you can see that you've labeled these dumping sites, 1 bucket, 2 bucket, these are landfill. So at least now for someone who is layman, they can now understand what you're meaning here. But again, you can add more data, because when you check on these data here, you're just having the dumping site and the roads here. But where is this location? So maybe someone can add a map for Greater Monrovia. So if I check this one like this, okay, so now there is a shape for that particular district here. So someone will know this is a district, okay? And maybe going further, someone will want to know where is it located on maybe the map of Africa. So again, the GIS software, it has capabilities. So I can try and load maybe something like an OpenStreetMap. So like that. I'll now see that this region, yes, it's true. It's somewhere in Greater Monrovia, somewhere in Liberia. So if I can even zoom out here, I can see where Africa is, that manner, and then I can now zoom in and see, yes, it's true. This place is somewhere in Liberia. Okay, so that's just a small demo. So you can now use this GIS software in doing so many of what you really need to do. It's a tool which is powerful, and you can really do a lot. You can really leverage this for decision making. So finally, what you have to do for this now is presentation. So the simplest presentation you can do from this is by having a map, okay? And the map that was presented here is just the same map which we are having on the PowerPoint slide here, okay? So let me just share that particular map that was. Okay, finally you can have a map. Now you can display, and now you can proceed in making your informed decisions. Okay, so that's all from me. I'll be going through the chats to check on questions on the links, and then I can reply that at this moment. So unless we are having any questions, any concerns, or any questions on how you can undertake a short training on how to use the GIS software, please let us know. And back to you, Steve.
Okay, thank you so much, Alan, for the wonderful presentation. I don't know whether there are, okay, I can already see some questions on the chat. Maybe you can check on that. Anyone interested in learning more about GIS, you can always contact me at steve@enhancement.com. And just to remind you, I'll be sharing this recording and the slides. So if you need them, you can write to me, steve@enhancement.com. So maybe back to you, Alan. I can see some 2 queries on the chat. And anyone else with a question, you can unmute and ask. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm seeing a question. Someone is asking. So this one is what's the name? So Paul Nyangaresi. So he's asking, does QGIS work similar to ArcGIS? Yes, it's similar. So it's just like when you're having something like WhatsApp and Telegram. So the main purpose is communicating, sharing media, and so on. So it's the same. It's just that now QGIS is open source and ArcGIS is commercial. So the functionalities are the same. But of course, you remember when you talk about commercial, it means when it's commercial, it comes with some other powerful tools. But basically, it works similar, especially when you're talking about the data analysis operations. So let me have, so someone is asking, so this one is Nisrin Hamed Abdul Salam. So he's asking, is there a specific gadget to determine the axis of the location? So I think this question is asking how you can overlay now your data on the map. So if you're talking about, so I'll approach this in 2 forms, screen. So the first form is maybe I'm having my data, which I've downloaded from a certain website somewhere, maybe the Humanitarian Data Exchange platform. So this data, it comes with the locational aspects. That's the latitude and the longitude, or the northing and the easting. Okay, so these northings and the eastings are now the ones which will determine where it will fall on a map. Okay, so when I talk about mobile data collection, for the mobile data collection, while you're developing your questionnaire, there is a place where you are commanding this tool, maybe ODK or Kobo Toolbox, that now please take the coordinates. Okay, so you're telling it, please take the northings and the eastings, or the latitude and the longitude, so that now when you bring your data to a GIS platform, it will fall on top of a location which you are interested in. So basically this one, there's no specific, but now it depends on the way the data is. Does it have the locational aspect? Does it have the latitude and longitude, the northings and eastings? So Nisreen, I'm hoping I've answered that. So let me check. So someone is asking, is there a certificate of attendance? Maybe Steve will go with that. Thank you. So I'd like the slide to be shared. So yes, we shall share the slide. Okay, recording. Could you please send us the links of the software? So let me share that immediately on the chat, just right away. So I'll stop sharing this. Let me share this. So for QGIS, if you would want to download that, remember it's free. You can download and install. Installing it's easy. And then you can try and see how you can maybe have some data there. So that is the link on the chat box. So you can maybe write that somewhere. For ArcGIS, so remember ArcGIS